Quick update for anybody on the call. We're going to give it one more minute to make sure everybody gets online, and we'll start at 7:01. Well, good afternoon and good evening, depending on where you live. My name is Jonathan Dobbs. I am the project director for the Committee to Support and Defend. I'd like to welcome you here on behalf of the American Constitutional Rights Union. And we're just thankful that you can be here tonight. We're going to talk through the topic of poll working, and we're going to go through a brief training. We just want to do kind of an overview of what poll working is and some of what it'll be like, once you sign up and get to your polling area. And tonight we're going to hear from Tracy Miller. Tracy is the vice president of the American Constitutional Rights Union. She's just a wealth of information on election integrity. She spent a lot of time in nonprofit and for-profit work, and we're just really grateful to hear from her knowledge tonight. And so, Tracy, thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for the opportunity, and the floor is yours. Please show us what you have for us tonight.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'd like to thank everybody for being on the presentation tonight. As Jonathan said, we're going to just go over generalities about what it might be like if you go ahead and decide to sign up as a poll worker, and what a little bit about what the training that you'll receive will be. Because every state is different in terms of their requirements for poll workers and the procedures that they have in place for voting in general, we couldn't possibly cover every state in this presentation. So we're going to provide a simple overview and introduce the concept of poll working. The first thing that we should probably cover is why poll workers are important. Serving as a poll worker is second only to casting your vote in terms of importance to our nation. Poll workers are the lifeblood of the election process. They provide voters with the information that they need during the voting process. They ensure that the voting process runs smoothly, that no voter is turned away or turned off because there are long lines or confusion or complication. Effectively, poll workers play the most crucial role in ensuring the strength and integrity of the voting process. You'll hear two different terms used, and they're sometimes used interchangeably, the terms poll worker and poll watcher. But there's a pretty profound difference. Poll workers are the folks that you came in contact with anytime you've ever been to a polling location. They're the folks that stand outside the polling place to welcome you and make sure that you know where you're going once you enter the polling. They're the people that check your ID when you come up to the desk to get your to get verified and be sent to the actual ballot box. Poll watchers differ because they are more often than not volunteers, while poll workers get paid. And the poll watcher is more often than not party specific, meaning that they identify with a particular political party more often than not. And in many states, they're actually appointed by the specific political party. Tonight's presentation focuses on poll workers because poll workers are nonpartisan. It doesn't matter what party you affiliate with. The most important thing is that we have our polling places staffed. So if you decide to become a poll worker, there's a variety of things that you can do during that process to contribute on election day. If you decide that you're going to sign up as a poll worker prior to election day, your area will provide you with a training that's specific to the requirements of the area in which you'll be working. And the training will give you a really solid overview of the election rules, your responsibilities, and frequently you'll be presented with the common situations you might encounter as a poll worker on election day. The training that you'll receive, in many cases, you'll have a choice if it's going to be online or in person. Sometimes your area will request that you be willing to come in prior to election day, potentially to help with some early setup and whatnot. But most of the time, poll workers are going to be asked to participate specifically on election day. Now, what does that exactly mean? Well, it means that you're going to be interacting with voters directly, more often than not, on the day of the election. And it means that you're looking at having a pretty full day that day. One thing that is important for you to note is that your day is going to be so full. In many cases, you'll be encouraged to vote in advance, to absentee vote yourself, so that you don't have to worry about casting your ballot on the day of the election, that you can go ahead and get that out of the way prior to the election so you can focus all of your attention on your responsibilities as a poll worker that day. Some states will allow you to work a half a day, but most states that you encounter are going to want you to be committed to volunteering your time that entire day, which means it can be a pretty long day, 10 or more hours conceivably. And as you're looking at what that day might work out to be for you, just because in your area the polls close at 6 or 7 p.m. at night doesn't mean that that's when you should expect to leave. A lot of locations will request that you be willing to stay a little past the closing of the polls so that you can help wrap things up, file paperwork, and tend to the closing out activities that are required. So it's a long day, but a very worthwhile one. I've gone ahead and put together a little chart here of just some basic potential job descriptions. So when I say that you'd be interested in signing up as a poll worker, that's not a one-size-fits-all job. There are a variety of positions that you could hold as a poll worker. If you look at this chart, and again, these are generalities in different states, they're all called different things. But I went ahead and picked the terms that were used the most frequently. The position of clerk or assistant clerk, or even the equipment operator, will frequently go to people that have served as poll workers in prior election cycles. If this is your first time signing up as a poll worker, you will most likely be considered either an inspector or a deputy, i.e., you'd either be the person that stands outside of the building, greeting folks and directing them into the entrance of the polling room, or you'd be the person that's sitting at the desk checking identification, verifying the person's name and address in the poll book, and going ahead and giving the voter the ballot and or directing them to the ballot box. Very administrative sort of tasks to start. Something important to note is that over the past few election cycles, there's been a big push to get younger citizens involved in this very important civic activity. High schoolers are now an integral part of the poll working process. And I've got here listed some requirements for potential high school poll workers. I would encourage each of you to consider, if you know in your community high school students that you think would be a valuable asset to the election day process, because it's a fantastic way for students to engage and get used to exercising their civic duties, add skills to their resume, and earn a little bit of money. Also, I'll make the note that this recording is going to be made available at the end of the evening to anybody that registered for the webinar. So while I encourage you to take notes, you don't need to try to keep up and write all this down. You can get a recording of this and you'll have it to review later. There's also pretty standard requirements for adult poll workers. In just about every state, you need to be a US citizen that's registered to vote or is lawfully admitted for permanent residence in the US, be at least 18 years old, comfortable at speaking and communicating with folks in English, and most importantly, able to complete the training and serve in person on election day. I've taken a couple minutes to try to highlight some specific things that may or may not be covered in depth during the training that you receive, because I think they're noteworthy. A term that you've probably heard during various election cycles is the concept of provisional ballots. So this is something that as a poll worker, you'll probably come in contact with on election day. So I wanted to go ahead and answer the question of what exactly is a provisional ballot. Provisional ballots are specifically intended to ensure that somebody who shows up, has taken the time to show up and vote on election day, is not turned away empty-handed should some sort of discrepancy at the polling place arise. And that discrepancy can be a variety of things, which I'll go over in a minute, but the purpose is to ensure that somebody doesn't go to the trouble of taking time off from work, driving all the way over to the polling location, and just because they encounter an issue at the polling location is then turned away. Rather than being turned away, a provisional ballot allows that voter's ballot to be cast, and then at a later time, the election officials to determine whether or not that ballot was in fact eligible, at which point the ballot would be counted just the same as a normal one would have been. The next concept is one of absentee or mail-in ballots. An absentee ballot is used to cast an absentee vote, which is submitted typically by mail. And it's submitted by a person who, for whatever reasons, either cannot or is not willing to physically be present at a voting center on election day. The term mail-in ballot is similar, although a few different states categorize these as two entirely different concepts. I can cover that during the Q&A if anyone's specifically interested in it. But for the purpose of this presentation, absentee ballots and mail-in ballots should be kind of considered the same thing as it pertains to your responsibilities as a poll worker. Some poll workers are going to be assigned to assist in tabulating either absentee or mail-in ballots. And this area is one where there can be a great opportunity for confusion and or mistakes. So it's important, if you're selected to process absentee or mail-in ballots, that you pay attention during the training and ensure that if you have any questions, that you speak with the election officials to get those questions answered. And then on election day, engage in mindful watching to ensure that you have a grasp of all the rules and regulations that are in place for processing mail-in or absentee ballots, and that the other people that are working alongside you have a solid understanding of what those rules and regulations are, and that they too are following them. And I mention this because there's some states that don't take an in-depth look at the various ways that absentee ballots can be submitted. And I've spoken with a variety of people who've poll worked in the past. And one area that they've commented on that is ripe for a bit of confusion is surrounding the envelope. There are some ballots, particularly those that are submitted by US citizens living overseas, that can be submitted in what we like to call a homemade envelope. Why would this occur? Well, the reason that you encounter one of these unusual envelopes is in a case where a US citizen living overseas has requested their ballot via email. Over the past few election cycles, emailing ballots to either study abroad students, citizens who are working as contractors in foreign countries, or the military, emailing the ballot has become an increasingly popular way of receiving the ballot. But the thing is, you obviously can't email a standard envelope. So what was designed was this option for handcrafting your envelope from sheets of paper and Scotch tape. Well, as somebody that's new to the election process, as serving as a poll worker, this Scotch taped and handmade looking envelope might seem unusual or potentially out of the norm. And in some cases, we see that poll workers who haven't been properly trained that these are a very valid and accepted form for submitting a ballot, they might mistakenly put them in a provisional pile. So I would encourage you, again, having been made aware of this during this training, as you go to your poll working training, if this area is not covered and you believe you still have questions, just to make sure that you ask the trainer who's responsible for getting you up to speed on your responsibilities as a poll worker, that you just ask for clarification around this. The other thing to be aware of is that, again, because there've been this large uptick in ballots that are being submitted by email, particularly to the military, the Postal Service came out with what they viewed as a logical solution to expedite these ballots being returned to the US and to make sure that the ballot as it was going through the Postal Service was properly handled. They developed a label that allows for expedited mailing service, which looks like this. The label part is actually the portion that the red arrow is pointing to, which is at the very top. And what actually happens is that barcode sits on the front of the label, and then this label, or sits on the front of the envelope, and this label is actually folded over the corner of the envelope. So it looks like a sticker with the barcode and the Express Mail logo on it. But it doesn't look like what we would consider a standardized Express Mail envelope, or something that looks typical for those of us that are just familiar with going to the post office and getting an Express Mail envelope. Again, because it's an area for potential confusion, there have been instances where these envelopes as well are set aside and stuck in a provisional pile. So once again, I just encourage you to be familiar with this, ask questions, and make sure that you're up to speed, and that those that would be working with you are up to speed, that these are perfectly acceptable ways of submitting these absentee ballots. All this to say that the training that you're going to receive in advance of serving as a poll worker is extraordinarily important. Your state is going to know how to provide the training for you that is specific to what you need in order to serve effectively as a poll worker. Serving as a poll worker is an excellent way for you to earn some extra money, but make, more importantly, an enormous contribution to your community, because voting couldn't take place without poll workers. Americans have obviously a very vested interest in free and fair elections. Your role as a poll worker is to help preserve that freedom and to ensure that every legal vote counts. So I encourage you, at the conclusion of my presentation here, to go ahead and ask questions. We're going to open this up for a Q&A. Any questions that are really specific to your state, Jonathan is going to be positioned to take offline and discuss with you via email or over the phone tomorrow. We're really invested and committed in getting you as much information as you feel you need to feel comfortable with signing up as a poll worker, and then getting you engaged in your community. Once you do sign up as a poll worker, we'd love you to tell your friends and to get as many folks as you can in your community to join you and fill this very important role. And then obviously on election day, we'd like to encourage you to do what we call mindful watching. Just be on the lookout for any areas where other folks who may have signed up as poll workers could potentially be experiencing some confusion, where there might be gaps in service because we didn't get enough poll workers signed up. If you notice anything that seems unusual, that seems like an area where assistance is needed, please make the officials on the floor notified of it, or you can also just go ahead and contact the Vote Fraud hotline, which I've provided here for you. And at that point, I think we're good, and I turn it back over to Jonathan.
All right. Well, thank you, Tracy. So if you're interested in trying to get signed up, you probably used my personal email, which is j.dobbs@committeetosupportanddefend.org. If not, just take a moment, write that down, j.dobbs@committeetosupportanddefend.org. you have any questions, or if you'd like to talk, have me guide you into your particular state or county. What I've done in real time is I've pulled up, if you go on the Committee to Support and Defend website, what you're trying to do is pull up the placard that is big and red like that, and it says poll workers needed now. And when you click on that, what you get an opportunity to do is you'll see another placard that says America needs you. And as you scroll down, maybe a quarter of the page, you're going to have the picture of the United States on there. You'll have a chance to select your state. And once you select your state, you get to choose whether it's poll working or poll watching you're trying to achieve. You click that one, and then it'll take you right into your state Department of State election page. And what we want to try to do is guide you into the county. And so most of those, not all of them, because every state's a little different, it's going to take you down to a list of all the different counties. You'll have a chance to pick your county. And once you pick your county, it should give you the detailed information like, phone number, address, email for your supervisor of elections. And many times they'll have the actual form on that state website right there. If they don't, you can do like I did. A couple of weeks ago, I called in, I got an email. They sent me a URL on the email that I got. They broke down in the video that I watched the 5 or 6 different jobs that Tracy just explained. And what I didn't know was you also have a chance to volunteer to be a poll worker in the primaries and also the general election. So there's an opportunity to go there and serve a couple of times in this next season for a number of states, not all, if they've already had theirs. But also there's different positions. So if you want to get signed up, just go to our webpage, and that webpage is committee-to-support-and-defend.org. Click the banner that says sign up for poll working, go down, find the United States map, pick your state, and it'll guide you into the county. If you have any questions, email me at j.dobbs@committee-to-support-and-defend.org. And Tracy, did you have any final comments before
yeah, no, I actually do. There's just, and I apologize, there's just one correction. I'm going to make. Jonathan's misspeaking on the email. Make sure I get that up there. It's not dot, it's just J Dobbs.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's fine. I just want to make sure nobody's confused. So it's jdobbs@committee-to-support-and-defend.org. Am I doing that? Can people actually see that?
They can. Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to open this up to Q&A at this time and see if there's any questions. My guess is most folks are probably going to want to have their state-specific questions answered by you directly. If there are general questions, we can take them now. Jonathan made a really important point that I think is, good to notice. Obviously, the commitment that you'd be making as a poll worker, it's wonderful that there is compensation and you do get paid for it, but we recognize that the real reason that most of you would be electing to become a poll worker is because you believe in the preservation of the American way of life, and you want to protect our right to vote and go ahead and serve and make this, fulfill this civic responsibility. Having said that, the nice thing, as Jonathan points out, is once you receive this training, you have the opportunity in many states to go ahead and work during a couple of different elections. And as I was referencing, each year that you come back as a poll worker, you are able to advance and take on greater areas of responsibility. So for folks that are stay-at-home moms, stay-at-home parents, retired, whatnot, it is a nice way of doing two things, both fulfilling your responsibility and being involved in your community, but also, getting a little bit of extra income, which everybody these days probably can benefit from. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Oh, okay. And so I'm going to go ahead and just, so I've got one question here that says, who assigns a worker to one of the 5 duties that I described? So what ends up happening is as you fill out that form, and I believe it probably occurs differently in every state, but in most states, you're going to fill out the form that Jonathan described that we can help you get to if in any way it seems confusing when you're clicking on the map and going to your state. So when you fill out the form, the election officials in your state are the ones that process these forms, and they determine if you've had previous experience, in which case you'd be contacted and asked if you'd be willing to serve as an assistant clerk or a clerk, because those are areas of pretty intense responsibility. Not everybody wants to take that on. So you'll be given the option of, if you've had previous experience serving in those roles. And then if it's your first time, in most states, what they'll do is they'll say, here are the openings that we have available. What's the most appealing to you? So it wouldn't be a blind assignment. You're going to be very involved in the process and given the opportunity. So for instance, they're like, my father wants to go ahead and serve as a poll worker. He can't stand outside and guide people. That's just not comfortable for him. He needs to be sitting. So if they offered him the option of, being the person that stood outside or the one that's sitting at the desk checking driver's licenses, he'd opt to be inside, and that's perfectly acceptable. They're thrilled that they have the person, being willing to serve in this role. So you'd be able to determine what you want to do. Okay, great. So this person Sunny just said that they are already a poll worker in North Carolina, and that what they're encouraged by, and this is a really good point. Sunny, thank you for making, thanks for making this point. So Sunny mentions that they're already a poll worker in North Carolina, and that what this presentation tonight's highlighted for them is that there could be possibilities in North Carolina for them to serve in the tabulation of the absentee or mail-in ballots. So I'm really thankful that Sunny pointed this out. If you've already served as a poll worker and haven't been offered the opportunity or hasn't been mentioned to you that these other options are available, please reach out to the election workers in your area if it's something that you're interested in. With the uptick in absentee and mail-in ballots, almost every state is eager to have additional people that are willing and able to help process these votes and these ballots. So please do reach out and ask about that, because I'd be surprised if it wasn't something that they were interested in plugging you in if you're willing to do that. And then Jonathan, you may know better than me on this. A follow-up question was, what kind of lead time is required in order to be assigned to one of those different positions? My answer would be, I think, as much lead time as possible. But Jonathan, have you seen specific information on how much lead time is needed?
I don't think it's a one size fits all. I think that my experience just recently was they gave me an option to serve in some different roles. I think there were 4 or 5 different jobs. All I needed to do initially was just respond back and let them know my preference. But they also said in the form, would you be willing to sign up in your particular precinct or another precinct in your county? So there were other opportunities if I didn't have to sign up there. But the other thing in our training anyway, and it is going to be different in other states, and is they have said sometimes people will fall out. They might have sickness, they may have a family emergency, and they'll have an opening, and you may find out last minute. So I hate to say it, but the answer is it kind of depends. But they are pretty timely in reaching out to you and letting you know when they have availability.
Excellent. And then I'm about to share my screen again so that you all can see it, because there's also some confusion on exactly the email address to email Jonathan on. So give me 1 second and I'm going to go ahead and just put it up on the screen. So hopefully everybody can see that. Jonathan, are you able to see that?
I see it. Just perfect.
Perfect. So that's the email address to go ahead and reach out to Jonathan. So we were pretty committed to keeping this short, because I know that actually there in Virginia, there's a primary tonight. So there's actually another presentation going on with another group right now. So I want to make sure that we that we keep this timely. Hopefully we've answered all your questions. We're really excited to have you email Jonathan. And I think he stated this, but I want to make sure that I restate it. If you click on our map and there's any piece of the application process that's confusing to you at all, we are here to jump on the phone with you and actually hand walk you through the process and make sure that anything that was confusing to you, anything that doesn't seem clear that your individual state's providing, we will find the answers for you. It is extremely important that we get people signed up to serve as poll workers, because particularly in the wake of the pandemic, folks that had previously been signed up to be poll workers haven't signed back up again and come back. We're seeing in every state that there is a dearth of people willing to serve in this capacity. So just by the fact that you're even on tonight, you're already making a great contribution, and we appreciate you. Anything that you can do to get other folks involved and interested in serving as a poll worker would be a great gift. So we're here to help make that happen. So please reach out, and we'll be excited to have you join us.
Great. Thank you guys for joining us. We appreciate it.
Take care.
Good night.